we'll go ahead and get started. And whether you're joining us live or Memorex, there is a workbook that can be downloaded for this workshop, which I highly, highly, highly recommend because it doesn't do much good to read or attend workshops or listen to podcasts or do whatever it is that you do and not do anything about it. That's like the worst waste of time ever, right?
Mhm.
So we highly, highly, highly recommend downloading the workbook, following along, writing on it, scribble on it, fill it out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so first question is, how long is your sales cycle?
Yeah, well, ours is longer than that.
Yeah, ours was about 8 months, I think, last time we actually figured it out.
Yep.
Meaning, if we had a first sales consultation today, or a free consultation is what we call them, that's the step in our sales process. If we had one of those today, it is very likely that that person, or somewhat likely that that person would be a customer within 8 months. Um, so, that's kind of the way that we figure it out. How long does it take from your first formal contact to that person actually writing you a check or sending you money or, whatever it is that you do?
And what that means is don't count on talking to them 3 times and making a sale.
Yeah. In the aviation industry, one of the biggest differences between us and retail is that there are no impulse buys in the aviation industry that I know of, unless you're really, really, really wealthy. You don't just go out and buy an airplane, right?
Uh-huh.
Most of the time, it takes quite a bit of uh, convincing other people, putting a structure together, figuring out staffing. A whole bunch of things have to go into every single transaction that we do in business to business sales and in aviation. So, as our resident MBA, if somebody doesn't know what their sales cycle is, how would they go about figuring that out, John?
Put a date on the calendar of the first contact and put a date on the calendar when you sold. As far as whether you use a spreadsheet or a calendar, it doesn't matter, but you have to figure it out the
Hmm.
hard way.
Yeah, you have to capture the
Unless
data.
you are sophisticated with a CRM and it does it for you.
Right. Yeah, and some of them theoretically do, but they only work if you put the data in. Just having Salesforce and paying thousands and thousands of dollars a month isn't going to give you this data. You actually have to put the data in to get good data out. So no matter what you're using, right?
Well, so far, but maybe with AI coming along, that might not be true anymore.
Well,
Because
it,
if you talk to somebody and AI is hooked into your Salesforce, as an example,
mm-hmm,
it's not yet, but if it is,
mm-hmm,
then it will know and
mm-hmm.
keep track of for you.
Yeah, and it would keep track of your phone calls and your emails and everything else and just enter those notes for you. So I guess that's a possibility in the future that maybe we have to look forward to.
Hmm.
Okay, so topics for today: holding pattern goals, what we don't want, right? Which is just as important as what we do want. Why closing techniques don't work. So, those of you who have been to the Zig Ziglars and the other types of sales training, the things that you need to unlearn for
Those
this
don't
industry,
work anymore.
right? Topics and delivery methods for your holding pattern. We'll have worksheets, examples, and building your own, etc. Measuring and improving your KPIs based on your holding pattern, and automating and delegating your holding pattern or parts of it, right?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. So, first of all, we talked about this in last month's workshop when we were talking about prospecting. Um, and I actually saw an advertisement in LinkedIn that came up. They called it the 90% rule. And it said 90% of the people that you talk to won't be ready to buy yet. And it was for business to business advertising. So even LinkedIn agrees sort of with our math. We say 85%. Okay. So these are the reasons that people aren't going to buy from you today. Um, there are a lot of them, and very few of them have anything to do with anything that you can control. So, the ones that we have some influence over are complexity. The simpler we can make the deal, the better. Lack of trust, we can do some things to improve their trust level in us. There are some credibility markers that we can do as salespeople that will help them feel better about doing business with us. We can help them even consider alternatives. In fact, when I send out our due diligence email, which is part of our sales process, it lists all of the other aviation marketing companies and how to contact them so that that will speed up that process for them because we want them to consider all the alternatives, right?
Mhm.
Ooh, there's also scheduling problems. So, maybe it's their busy season or their show season or everybody's traveling or somebody's on vacation or whatever. They need to get approval from somebody. We've had that happen where, we've actually had a handshake deal and it didn't get formally approved until months later, right? Lack of clarity about ROI. This is something we can help with in some cases where we'll take their data, we can put it into some kind of a calculator and say, this is how we can visualize this working for you, best case, worst case, most likely case, with a lot of disclaimers around that and so on. Sometimes they're waiting for cash flow. That happens to us a lot as consumers. We've got a whole whiteboard of things that we would like to buy at some point in the future, but it makes it to the top of the whiteboard. Everything else has to wait, right? All of us have that um, have constraints, as far as time and money and everything else, or their hair is on fire, for whatever reason. I just mean that to say that something else that is very, very urgent is uh, monopolizing their attention right now, right?
Mhm.
Okay. And this has happened to you as a consumer as well, right?
Um,
Any
well,
of these or all of these.
some of them, yeah, of
Hmm.
course.
Exactly. And as a business to business consumer, it's even worse, because often it's even more complicated and more people need to be available to make a decision and so on. Okay. So here's what we do want to do with the holding pattern. You don't need to sell the whole chain. You only need to sell the next link, right? So basically, if you've done this right, you have found a person or people, group of people, company, whatever, that has the money, authority, and need to be a customer. You have started a relationship that everybody feels good about, and you have invited them to take the next step in the sales process, and you have a process to keep them engaged indefinitely until their issues from the last slide are resolved, right?
Yep.
Okay. So the result of all that is you have a full sustainable pipeline or what we used to call a funnel, right, of qualified prospects. We keep this on a spreadsheet, and I like to have at least 10 good qualified customers in the 50% or better um, probability of becoming customers on the spreadsheet at all times. If I have less than 10, then I start to feel a little weird, and I know that I need to spend more time on my prospecting, right? And approaches and things like that. So, I need to have at least 10 good 50% or better prospects in the holding pattern at any given time. Your results may vary depending on the size of your company and how big of a tribe you need to feed and how many how big your company is and how much money you need to bring in this year, next year, or whatever. Right?
Yep.
Cool. Make sense?
Dollars, hopefully.
Makes dollars. All right. Okay. And here is what we do not want. We've had salespeople do this, call you every single day. Are we ready yet? Are we ready yet? Are we ready yet? Are we ready yet? Are we going to do this? Are we going to get started? Especially when we've got factors beyond our control as consumers where we can't make that purchase decision yet. So, we want to avoid the annoying repetition and we also want to avoid the tumbleweeds, right? Where nothing happens and you have the ghost town and then you've forgotten their contact information. Somehow you've misplaced their postcard or whatever it is that it has their contact information on it. You can't find their email, you can't remember their name, and you can't get back to them. And this has happened to us as well when we actually wanted to buy something and can't find the person we were going to buy it from.
And my first large item was an airplane.
Hmm.
Yeah, I know. I remember that.
Yeah. Well, you had the postcard, I think, stuck to your bulletin board. So we remembered who it was. So it wasn't a total tumbleweed situation. We didn't completely lose him.
Well, we did for the first couple of months because the postcard went away.
Ah, these things
It
happen.
was the second or third postcard they sent that I
Hmm.
finally.
Right. So those are kind of the two extremes that we want to navigate the space between. And this is how we're going to do it. We're going to use, well, okay, first of all, before we get there, let's talk about why closing techniques don't work anymore. Um, Most sophisticated customers have seen it and heard it. And, there's the saying, a tactic known is a tactic blown, right? Don't try that on me. I'm smarter than that. And some of those things are like, the puppy dog clothes. Just try it for a week and see what you think. The pros and cons close, the thermometer close. How likely are you to make a purchase today on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 100? Those kinds of things are seen as manipulative nowadays. They're just not exactly the world's most sophisticated closing techniques. They've been used since the 50s in some cases. The Benjamin Franklin close, one of my favorites, which actually makes a lot of sense. You basically take a piece of paper or a whiteboard and you put down the pros and the cons, and then you write down everything that they say, and then you refute it point by point. The problem with that is that most um, factors are not weighted equally, right? And most people make the decision based on their gut at the end of the day rather than on any particular logical sequence. So, you can't do the high pressure, you can't do the presumptive close, any of those kinds of things these days with an intelligent customer. Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah, I mean that high pressure clothes, it never worked for me, even as
Hmm.
I was growing up.
Hmm.
In fact, we had a time
Exactly.
for buying a car, and we went in. It was after work, so 6:30, 7 o'clock to look at a car, and I really wanted the car, but they tried the high pressure stuff on me, and I said nope. I said we got down to the point where I said I will offer you this much for the car.
Hmm.
And you're refusing to take it. I said, well, you mean? And then I said, yeah. So I got up and we started walking out. And the guy said, really? You're going to leave like that? I said, absolutely. He said, "Fine."
Absolutely.
And then he said, fine, we'll do what you want.
Hmm.
They did. And we bought the car.
Yeah. All of these closing techniques come from a time when there was less competition for any particular product. So, if you wanted that particular kind of car, maybe there was only one dealership that would offer it because they had exclusive contracts or exclusive territories or whatever. That is not true anymore. People can get pretty much anything they want from anywhere they want.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. They can get anything. Maybe not the brand, but they can certainly get the capabilities of any vehicle, as an example.
yeah. And this came from a time when the salesperson was the sole source of information. And nowadays, people know quite a bit about what they want to purchase before they ever walk in the door, or before they ever arrive at your website, or before they ever schedule a call with you. So, customers are smarter. They have more options. They know it. They're driving the car or they're driving the sale. It's their timeline, not yours, in most cases.
Exactly. You know, and
Mhm.
to example that, I went another vehicle, but
Mhm.
later after that one, uh, I went into a dealer and said, the guy says, how can I help you? I said, well, you probably can't. I said, this is the vehicle I want, but you won't be willing to sell it to me for a price I'm willing to pay. So I just won't look at it right now and get a brochure because I know where I can go to get it for the price I want.
Mhm.
And the guy just about fell over. He said, seriously? I said, exactly. He says, I will sell it to you for any price any other dealer will sell. I said, are you sure? He said, yes. Well, I had access to prices, fleet prices. So I knew exactly what each component on the vehicle was that I wanted was going to cost. So I laid it out to him. I said, if you can match that, I'll buy it here. Next day, he called me and said, I can match it. And I said, okay.
Okay.
And I bought it.
Yeah. Kept your end of the deal.
Mm.
And that is, I mean, that's really where we come in. Although most of what we sell, aviation products and services are not commodities, so people can't necessarily price match, but still they control a lot more of the deal than anybody used to. So that's a problem. So, if the ball is completely in their court and they are completely in control of the timeline, how can we influence that? There are some ways that we can add urgency to a campaign. One of them would be like a natural or a regulatory deadline. Like, the FAA says that you have to have this piece of equipment by this date. That's a natural regulatory deadline, right?
Yep.
Or the tax laws are changing next year, so it's to your advantage to finish this aircraft deal this year. That's
Basically,
another.
somebody else setting the deadline.
Exactly. And then you can take advantage of that. Uh, you know, if a regulatory body or, some practical reason causes that, or even just winter. It's going to be winter at some point in the future. So, they're going to need cold weather equipment for their operation prior to winter, so that's a nice natural deadline. Okay, limited time offers. So, as an example, we have an opening for a titanium level client. That doesn't happen every day. We don't necessarily have those, the capacity for that all of the time. So, the first titanium client that comes along will get that slot. And that is just kind of a natural limited time offer. It's also kind of a limited stock, even though it's a service.
True.
Um,
Because it
yeah.
would take more staff to do that.
Hmm. Exactly. Deadline for delivery. That would be something along the lines of if you want this delivered by X date, it's kind of a um, in the sales process, you can find out if they have a particular, they're going to a show or they're doing something in particular, and they need to have X, Y, or Z in order to meet some deadline of their own. Then you set your deadline prior to that so that you've got the lead time set up. Here's one that is vastly underused. Emphasize the consequences of a delay. So if your product saves them money or is a safety issue, you can emphasize the consequences of the delay, meaning, you are X% more likely to have an incident if you don't have this piece of safety equipment, or you are losing X amount of money every day that you are not implementing this method of making your operation more efficient, right?
Hmm.
So, this one I think is vastly underutilized. You can highlight the competition, say, hey, your competitors have this and you don't. Who do you think their customers are going to choose? Demonstrating the value. Again, the more physical you can get, especially at a trade show or something like that with a demonstration, the more urgency comes into effect. Emphasizing ROI, once again, that's just the same thing as emphasizing the consequence of delay, except in dollars and cents. This will add to your return on investment, or this will detract from your expenses this year if you do this. Offering bonuses or extras, that's something that we never, 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 almost never, I should say almost never, recommend giving discounts for things because it erodes the credibility in your pricing structure. It starts a race to the bottom among your competitors. It does a number of things that are really, really bad. So this is kind of a next worst choice, less worst choice, which is to offer bonuses or extras. So, say if you buy this month, then we will throw in an extra service or something along those lines, or a related service or something like that. And then the last one is like creating a sense of fear of missing out. Like for a flight school, okay, well, are you going to work at Chick-fil-A for another year? Are you going to get your pilot rating? Um, that fear of missing out, or that fear of losing an opportunity, can be very powerful as well. All right. So other topics that you can use in your holding pattern. Um, a lot of people say, rather than just calling people every day and saying, hey, are we ready to do business yet? What you want to be doing is reducing the number of reasons for them not to do business with you, and increasing their level of trust, and making it more likely that they're taking them one step further in the sales process, one drip at a time, because that's all we really have their attention for often is 15 seconds at a time. If you send them an email, or they see a social post, or they get a piece of postal mail from you, you get 15 seconds of their attention. And so you want to communicate something very small but very powerful in every one of those little touches. So you might include, industry trends and insights, case studies, success stories, product updates, thought leadership pieces. This is what I know about this topic that we're working on. Customer testimonials and reviews, how-to guides and tutorials. They may be wondering, how would this work? Even if I bought this and took it home, I don't know how it would work. And then they're really going to feel uncomfortable about making the purchase. Expert interviews, webinars and events like this one, product comparisons, competitive analysis, regulatory and compliance updates. So, send them, hey, this is going to be changing next year. Here are, the 5 new ADs that are coming out that our product or service can help you address, things like that. Make sense?
Yep.
All right. Cool. So you don't have to be saying the same thing all the time. Okay. So go to your worksheets if you have them. And what you want to pick is an urgency message from page 7. And you want to pick some other topics that you can choose um, in your holding pattern. So, what are some things that you want to communicate while somebody is in the process of saying, yes, I'm kind of interested in your product, but I'm not ready to make a decision yet. What are 3 things that you can include in that holding pattern that would be useful to provide them in some regular schedule? With me so far? Questions? Does it make sense?
Oh yeah.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So now that you've got your topics, you want to vary the format and the delivery method. So what we're trying to avoid is the repetition, right? So we want to hit them in different ways at different times. So if we're looking at this holding pattern as a week, a month, a quarter, any time period that you want to hit them with as many different formats as you can. So you might send them a book, you might connect with them on social media, you might meet with them at an event, you might call them on the phone, you might send them a newsletter in the mail. We used to do that. We've kind of gotten away from that, but I'm thinking about getting back into that sort of thing. You send them an email. In our case, we send, podcast episodes. There's lots of things that you can do while they're in this holding pattern to keep them in constant contact with you, to quote a email company. There's also MailChimp, constant contact works as well. But, you want to use email as a great delivery method, but it shouldn't be your only one. So you want to vary this quite a bit, as much as you can. Use as many different formats as you can that are cost effective, credible, hit them in different ways at different times and are not repetitive, right? So you can also do video, you can do written content, you can do infographics, you can do, images, you can do all kinds of things just to make sure, because everything's going to convince a different person in a different way. So even if you have said something to somebody, they didn't necessarily hear it, right? But then if you send them a graphic that shows this, they might be more likely to grasp the concept than when you told them about it. So you want to make sure that the key messages that you're sending them using different methods, and you're also using different materials to do that. Yeah, some people like to read. We've had people that, of course, we put things on social media, we put things on our website and everything else. We produce the same material for a number of years, produced exactly the same material in a printed newsletter, and it would be on our website for 3 months. Then they get it in a newsletter, same article. And then we get calls about that article, that they had every opportunity to see in an email or see on our website. But then when it comes to them on a piece of paper, then all of a sudden it gets their attention. They read it and they understand it. Weird, huh?
Yep.
But true.
I know. I remember.
That's happened to you as well, I think, where, you hear something, and then finally somebody puts it in terms that you can understand. And it's really refreshing when that happens. All right. So here are some of the methods or some of the platforms you can use in your holding pattern. Um, if you're just starting out, you can choose three. I think three is a good minimum, but you'll want to have as many as you possibly can. And I recommend at least one low cost method. Email is a great one because it doesn't matter whether you have 100 or 500 or 5,000 contacts, the price for sending email doesn't change all that much. So that's a super low cost method. And then I would choose a very high credibility method. The highest credibility method is to drop in their office, right? And Jeremy was the master of this. Basically, he'd walk in without an appointment, tell jokes to the receptionist, and get um, his foot in the door, literally. And those in person, shake people's hand, look them in the eye. That is the highest credibility you can possibly get. But it's also the most impractical for most of us most of the time. So if you can choose three methods, one low cost, one high credibility, um, anything you like, right? Whatever suits your personality, your preferences, etc. Which are your favorite to learn about a new product or something? I know you like webinars when people do that online, because then you have an opportunity to ask questions and learn from other people in the webinar.
Well, it depends on where I am in the sales cycle.
Hmm.
If I'm buying, I mean,
Yeah.
uh, but if I'm buying, I actually prefer in person or a phone call.
Okay. That makes sense. So yeah, trade shows or in-person visits, those are both ways to be in the same room and shoulder to shoulder and that kind of thing, and be able to ask questions and things. Phone calls, I think, are still really big with a certain demographic, but it's super hard to get somebody on the phone unless it's a scheduled call. So and if we're going to schedule a call, we might as well do Zoom. So that's my opinion on that subject. But a lot of people still do a lot of phone calls, and it still really works for them.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So this is our holding pattern, or at least a version of our holding pattern. So you can see in the first column is the timing, which is almost always um, at least started by the customer. So the first one is on request, right? So and the topic is a consultation, and then what they get is a Zoom meeting plus the recording of the Zoom meeting plus some reports about what we talked about in the meeting, right? So that's the delivery. And it's usually delivered by email the day after the meeting. So, second step, they make a consultation request. We mail them an information package and they get that in the postal mail if they're in the United States. If they're not in the United States, then this doesn't have a great ROI for us. But if they're here, we do that as well. Another thing that we do when they request a consultation, so you can see there are three actions that we take when someone requests a consultation with us, is to follow and connect with them on LinkedIn and to try to have a conversation about something that's relevant to them, if that makes sense, just so that we get to know them. We get to know, what they're typically posting about, what their problems are, a little bit about their company, et cetera. So that's a really good way, once again, low cost, high credibility way to do that. Okay. And then after that consultation request, so it's kind of a high touch situation for the next week or so after a consultation, then they kind of fall back into a less intense pattern. So, weekly they get our newsletter, email newsletter, which is, typically our podcast or whatever your newsletter is. You can send that on a weekly basis. Um, we actually moved to a twice weekly newsletter. One is kind of an internal for our clients. Wins Wednesday is what we call it. The weekly newsletter is our Marketing Monday. So that's usually a best practices or, something they can use, some useful information. And that's weekly. And then monthly, we do our how-to guides, tutorials like this one, webinars, etc. Quarterly, product updates and innovations. Here's what's going on. We've added this software to our product line. A lot of times I will call people personally and tell them about that. Hey, I know you were interested in this. We didn't offer it at the time that we did our consultation 6 months or a year ago, but now we have that. So, let's talk. And then annually, we like to meet with people, prospects and clients in person at NBAA. We like to have a breakfast because everybody needs a good breakfast. And in Las Vegas, it's really hard to get people together after the show because there's so many things pulling them in different directions. And Las Vegas is the built from the ground up for distraction, right? So if we catch them early in the morning, things work much better than trying to catch them later in the day at some of these towns where they have shows, right?
Hmm.
Okay. So this is our holding pattern. We recommend that every one of our clients create something like this. And it's going to be your style, your platforms, your materials, your messaging, etc. So you have one of these in your workbook and you have a pen. So you get to fill this out and figure out what goes in this. And we'll put that in your uh, if there's anything that we can help you with, especially if you're a client, we can help you put that together. So if you want to do a weekly newsletter, if you want to do a printed newsletter, if you want to do a webinar, any of those materials we can help with. And also, your social media engagement as well.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Okay. So how do you know if this is doing any good? Right? Um, These are some of the waypoints that you might have in your holding pattern. If it's on LinkedIn, then they give you, they used to be in what we call SEMrush, which is our software that we use for social media engagement, but they've since popped that out because of privacy reasons or whatever. So you can go directly into LinkedIn and see your audience size. You can see engagement numbers. You can see the people that were the most interested in your posts and things like that, and see which of your posts were the most engaging, etc. For email, whether you're using Salesforce, HubSpot, Constant Contact, Pardo, whatever system you're using, there is a open or click rate and some nice statistics that they usually give you in a fabulous little report. One thing we highly recommend, and this is kind of a pro tip um, that we've learned over the years, is if somebody has just opened an email, that is a great time to call them because obviously they're interested in your product or service enough to have opened your email, and that will give you a really good way of filtering your salespeople's time into who they should call right away. If you are at a trade show, if you're doing appointments at your trade show, of course, that's a KPI. You can measure the number of booth visitors. You can do that with a clicker. You can do that with badge scans. You can use the number of business cards that you collect. The one thing you don't want to do is make a game out of this and just try to run up the numbers without taking quality into account, right? Because you could go ahead.
No, I just said absolutely.
Yeah. Um, we knew somebody that would give their salespeople a bonus for a number, reaching the highest number of business cards that they could collect at a trade show, which is a terrible, terrible idea because, then they're just going to get business cards from anybody that they can. You're just rewarding the wrong thing. These people are not necessarily qualified or anything else. So you want to be careful with your KPIs and make sure that they're actually relevant, useful, and can't be gamed by well-meaning or unwell-meaning salespeople, right?
Yep.
Okay. If you're doing a live webinar, you've got your landing page visits, you've got your signups, you've got your attendance, you've got your Zoom stats, all of that stuff is available from a webinar. So you can see which were your best webinars this year. You want to do more like that and less like your worst ones, right?
Mhm.
For the telephone, there's only one way to do this, and that is to make notes in your CRM or your spreadsheet or your whatever that somebody called you, right? And typically it's great to have a sheet by the phone, especially if you have more than one person answering the phone, and ask people, "How did you find us?" And they can note it down with a hash tag or just hash mark, or write some notes on a sheet of paper or a notepad right next to the phone about how they found you and what they were interested in and everything else, so that you can put those notes in a CRM and track those appropriately. For postal mail, you can either use QR codes on the printed pieces and see how many people zapped that with their phone after you sent a printed piece, or you can use your postal tracking to see if it actually got there. So those are ways to measure your KPIs for each of those waypoints in your holding pattern, right?
Yep.
All right. So yeah, you want to have a KPI for everything and understand that what gets measured gets improved, but don't let the numbers drive the train because, like I said, pretty much any number can be faked or spoofed or taken out of context or used out of proportion. But you do have to keep them in order to have a really good feel for what's working and what's not. All right. Okay. So then once you have those KPIs, then you improve or replace your bad performers and double down on your great performers. And our best performer for a number of years has been what we call our blue folder. If we send a blue folder in conjunction with a consultation, someone is a lot more likely to become a prospect or a good client in the future. And what's included in our blue folder is a handwritten note, a sheet of testimonials, 3 customer case studies, a service catalog, a checklist. If you're shopping for a marketing firm, here's are the things that you should be looking for. This is actually a really nice piece that we recommend for all of our clients because a lot of your future customers don't know what they should be looking for, right? They don't know what's available on the market. They want to sound educated and, they want to do a fair comparison of what's on the market. Details about the different service levels that we have. We have a book, Social Media Guide for Aviation Professionals. And if convenient, I also send the notes from our first meeting in this, which is usually a marketing worksheet. So they have all of that in one folder, and it looks concise, it looks credible and reputable. And we spend some money on printing, and we want to make this look like it is something that people are proud to share with their boss, and show them these are people that I'm considering, and those kinds of things. Cool.
Yep.
All right. Okay. All right. So the next thing is to, you probably at this point saying, this is great, but this sounds like a heck of a lot of work. So the best way to manage work that needs to be done, and it needs to be done because it will improve your sales over time and it will improve your revenue over time. But you can automate or delegate parts of it. And to automate it, you can use any of these. All of these tools are good for what they're good for, right? HubSpot, Salesforce, MailChimp, Pipedrive, Meet Edgar does our social media scheduling. Infusionsoft is a CRM that we used. It's now called Keep. There's a lot of different tools and software that can help you with this. This is a poll that we did on LinkedIn. It looked like HubSpot and something else were neck and neck at the time that we did the poll. So there's a lot of them being used in the aviation industry, and people are pretty successful with them as long as they actually do use them to automate their holding pattern. The I guess, caveat that I would add, or the warning that I would add with this, is don't let the machine drive the truck, right? Um, or don't let the machine fly the plane. uh, they have some assumptions that they make, and often they'll put AI and other logic and other crazy things in here um, that are trying to help you. They don't know everything about your business, so sometimes the things that they do to try to help will not be all that helpful. So you want to figure out your holding pattern on paper, ideally on the worksheets that you have in front of you right now and that you're writing on right now, and then put it into the software. So you want to have a human being figure this out and then put it into the machines, right?
Mm.
Okay. We must protect ourselves from the machines. And then the other thing is to delegate it. So we have people who are very, very good at different parts of your holding pattern. So, if we need landing pages, we've got website people. If we need social media, we've got social media people. If we need content and articles and press releases and so on, we've got content, article, and press release people. So, our team is your team. If you are a client of ours, we are very happy to put our resources to work to help you build a holding pattern, because this really is a long-term great investment for you and for us. Because if you have a great holding pattern, your business is going to do well and you're going to need more of us in the future. So it's in our best interest to help you build a great holding pattern and help you succeed. Right?
You bet.
Okay, cool. So we met Penn Jillette at a marketing event. Geez, that had to have been 10 years ago.
Geez, it's been that long.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. This was a um, Glazer Kennedy Insider Circle. For those of you that know Dan Kennedy or Bill Glazer, this was one of their events. And this was a picture that, of course, they did the red carpet thing with Penn Jillette. And he did an amazing workshop on magic and marketing. And one of the key takeaways from that is the secret to magic is that I'm willing to work harder than anybody else thinks is reasonable. And, if you know Penn Jillette or know of his work, uh, he puts so much rehearsal and so much practice and so much work behind everything that he does. And, we really, really respect him for that. And he's a great marketer. The Penn and Teller show has been at the, what is that casino? It's just off the strip. I think it's the Rio. And, if you drive through Las Vegas, you will see the Penn and Teller 20-story, 30-story, whatever, billboard on the Rio casino. And it has been the headliner there for more years than I can count. And they aren't leaving anytime soon. And that is because he is a great marketer and he fills every show and has been doing that for so long. It's really amazing. Never lets up. So if you think this is a lot of work, it is a lot of work, but there are ways to automate and delegate it. And, sometimes there's just no substitute for work. You want the results. That's the way it goes, right? If it were easy, everybody would be doing it. Okay. All right. So last two workshops we covered prospecting, and today we covered holding patterns. If you are ready to move on to sales, we have a course for that, Aviation Sales Fundamentals on Demand. And, that talks about negotiation and, a lot of the things that go into this green segment of the circle. And then a month from now, we're going to be doing resales, recaptures, and referrals, which is the last part of this circle. And then once you get really, really good at the whole circle, this becomes so much easier, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. And then you feel really, really comfortable because you have an idea of how many sales you're going to be making 8 months from now, or whatever length your sales cycle is based on how many consultations you're doing this month. And that really helps you sleep at night. If you're a business owner that needs to make payroll and you need to make a certain amount of revenue, you really have a better idea. Once you've ironed out all of the kinks in each of these segments, you really have a much better idea of how to make that work. So if you are a client, great. Consider upgrading. So we can do more of that work for you and you can delegate more to us. If you are not a client, you should be. This is really the best deal that I've ever heard of as far as marketing and everything else goes. And if you do a really good job on all of those marketing segments, we can help you do that. And then you have a much easier life as far as consistent revenue, consistent sales, consistent marketing. You can turn down clients you don't like if you've got a full pipeline. And that's, I think, for the last 2 years, we've been able to do that. We've been able to pick our clients because we've got enough coming in that we get to choose the ones we want to work with. And that is such a luxury. It's really, really nice. It wasn't always the case.
No, it wasn't.
All right. Okay, so if I can leave you with one thought, it's great marketing is a habit, not an act. You can't just do one Super Bowl commercial and have customers for the rest of your life. That is not the way it works anymore if it ever did, right?
Exactly.
All right. Well, have a great month and we will see you next time.